least one prescription drug last month. So obviously this is something that's affecting at least half of the population. However, when we look at other data, the use of multiple prescriptions, this is increased by a staggering 20%. However, what is most telling and trending of all is that the use of 5 or more prescriptions by a single patient has increased by over 70%. So more and more medication for the people that are taking medication. So, we ask why? Why so many medications are needed nowadays? This was not the case of yesteryear. Well, when we look at North America, for example, 70% of adults are overweight or obese. 1/3 of them have diagnosed hypertension. And 1 in 5 cancer deaths over the age of 50 are directly attributed to excess body weight. So when we look at other statistics, how does the future look? Well, nearly 1/3 of our children are already overweight or obese. And that statistic has doubled since 1980, so it's predicted that 1 in 3 of those will actually become diabetic. 1 in every 3 children will become diabetic. So that doesn't look good. Now, this is not just a U.S. problem. This is a world problem, a global problem. And when we look at mortality under the age of 60, death under the age of 60, the U.S. hardly is a leader here. We're looking at Africa, the Pacific Rim, Asia, the Americas in general, South America included, India. So diabetes is a huge problem worldwide. This is just another metabolic disease that people would associate with obesity. And, however, it is not necessarily always the fact. And we have to look at other factors that create these diseased states in our body. The sum total of all of this, though, and where we really need to focus is on cardiovascular disease, as it is the #1 cause of death worldwide. Now, when we look at what has our action been so far for cardiovascular disease, let's use the United States as a case study, and let's look at the data compiled by the Centers for Disease Control and really see how that's working. So when we look at obesity trends in the United States in 1990, we see a 10 to 15% obesity rate back in 1990. Now, fast forward 10 short years, and now all of a sudden we're at 15 to 19%, and even reaching 20% in certain places in the United States. Fast forward another 10 years, and we are at 20+% obesity, with many parts of the country now exceeding 30+% obesity. Not overweight, we're talking clinical obesity. So, the question then becomes, with all the prescription medications that are being used, why still are obesity, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease still increasing? And, that's the question. And when we're giving more and more medication to patients, we really got to wonder what they're thinking, but we also got to wonder what we're thinking. Because the truth is, medication doesn't address the true problem. Medication didn't cause the problem, and it's not going to necessarily solve the problem. So, but when we continue to throw medication at the problem and continue to get these type of results, we need to understand that this itself is a vicious cycle, and this is part of the problem that we have today. And the cost is unacceptable. The cost of healthcare is astronomical, but the real cost is unacceptable, because the cost is of human life. And the cost is our brothers, our fathers, our mothers, grandfathers, uncles, grandmothers, wives, children, uncles, sisters, coworkers, friends, people that are dying prematurely, unnecessarily, from cardiovascular complications. And there's way too much of this going on to be acceptable. So how are we going to truly solve these problems? And well, the solution is first to understand one key principle. And if we understand this, we can actually start to really, truly solve the problem. And that is that this will never solve that, which is no amount of medication in the world will it ever solve essentially what is a dietary and nutritional problem. So with that being firmly established, and if we can accept that, then let's look further at the problem and understand the relationships involved here. So when we look at when we look at, oh, I apologize, my slide is frozen here. So I think it's advancing, but I'm not seeing it. Give me 1 second, I'm going to start the slide deck over again. Appreciate your patience. Well, the internet connection is acting up here, so I apologize. If I need to, I can probably do the entire presentation without the slides, but let's see if we can get this back up. I'm gonna log out of the system. Stay put. It'll just take a second, and I'll log right back in. Thank you so much. Next, to understand the relationships involved. And so when we look at the relationships, and what has changed here over the last 100 years, what we need to understand is the changes were to our environment. It was industrialization, the increase in population density, mass production of food to feed people in central areas called cities. Less energy was required to obtain this food, and we created an imbalance with the environment. And all along, we see an increase in cardiovascular disease, metabolic disease, and obesity. Now, when we look at co-prevalences, things that occur together with cardiovascular disease, we know that a body mass index of 25, which is considered overweight, or 30, which is considered obese, is highly correlated with both cardiovascular disease and diabetes. So when we look at other relationships beyond the cardiometabolic relationships that we're accustomed to, which is diabetes, cardiovascular, and metabolic disease, we see other relationships here that are very strongly correlated. Cancer, over 60 types and counting. Osteoarthritic or mobility issues, arthritic pain issues due to inflammation, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, gastroesophageal reflux disease or GERD, and depression, all associated with excess body weight, in particular in the central abdomen area. So when we look at that cycle, we see another vicious cycle, because overweight and obesity, especially in the abdominal area, will cause something called insulin resistance. And let me explain it this way. When you eat food, your body will try to convert some of that food into glucose, and that's great. But your body has to use insulin to get the glucose into the cells where it can actually be used for fuel. Now, when you have insulin resistance, the body releases insulin in its normal fashion, except that it's blocked by some interfering factors created by the adipose tissue or the fat cells, and therefore it suppresses the effectiveness of insulin, and your body has to, in a compensative mechanism, release more insulin. So this is called insulin resistance. The problem with this is that excess insulin causes weight gain, and weight gain causes more overweight or obesity, more insulin resistance, and you can see that this is a vicious cycle. Now, one other key important relationship that I'd like to focus on is a hormone called leptin. And leptin is a hormone that's responsible for satiety, or also long-term energy balance. And so satiety is how full we feel when we're eating. Now, you can imagine if we're not feeling full when we're eating, we're going to overeat. So this hormone of leptin is very important. Now, there is something called leptin resistance, and that's when you're not getting the signal across the blood-brain barrier that you're full when you're eating. So obviously it's going to lead to more cravings, overeating, overweight, and obesity, and we can go back to the previous slide and see how that has an issue with insulin resistance and more weight gain. So what's important here? What's important to understand? The relationship with dyslipidemia. And this is a very key connection here. In particular, high triglycerides. High triglycerides will block the leptin signal across the blood-brain barrier. Now, if you look at high triglycerides, what in particular will cause hypertriglyceridemia, besides already maybe some overweight and obesity, it's highly processed foods, high sugary drinks, things like this. So sugars here having a link to the lipids, or the cholesterols, or the lipids as you know them, and this is having an effect on our appetite. So understanding those relationships, we just need to understand that the sum effect of all that is that cardiovascular disease is still the leading cause of death worldwide, and this is where we really need to focus our number one attention. And so where to focus in particular on that progression of disease, I like to look at it in this fashion. And what I do is I look at the progression of disease. And when we look at this particular diet, the origin of this type of food, improper nutrition, high glycemic foods that turn into sugar quickly in the body, and low fiber diet, the effect is the same across the board in all types of individuals. We will have an increased insulin response, an increase in body mass index, an increase in dyslipidemia, or unfavorable cholesterols or triglycerides. And this will lead to these syndromes called insulin-resistant, leptin-resistant hyperglycemia. Now, the sum total of all that is simply something called inflammation. And I like to explain inflammation in the word irritation. And in the way I describe it to my patients, because inflammation, it's almost overused, but it is the key point, the key principle, the thing that is causing damage and harm in our bodies, inflammation. But I describe it as irritation. And I say, if I were to scratch my arm, maybe a couple times, no problem. But if I were to scratch it a few thousand times, can you imagine how raw and how that skin would be bleeding and very, very sensitive? Well, imagine that on the inside of the arteries, where you're having this rawness, this irritation in the arteries. And then you can start to understand how inflammation can do a lot of damage, or irritation can do a lot of damage within the cardiovascular system. Now, it's this inflammation or irritation that causes all the harm and destruction to the endothelium, and that's the inside lining of the arteries, for example, that causes the harm in cardiovascular disease, diabetes, dyslipidemia, and cancers that lead to complications and premature mortality. So, today in medicine, we focus our pharmacotherapies here heavily on cardiovascular disease, diabetes, dyslipidemia, and cancer in an effort to prevent those complications or premature mortality. But what I say is that we should be focusing here in the very beginning in eliminating the entire progression towards inflammation from the get-go. So really what I'm saying is we need to prescribe nutrition. But not manual nutrition. Targeted nutrition that has a medical benefit, and this is called medical nutrition. Now, when somebody asks what is medical nutrition, I like to defer to the guidelines. I say, let's look at the guidelines that we're supposed to be following in the treatment of many of these disease states, and let's start with the NCEP, the National Cholesterol Education Program guidelines for first-line treatment of high cholesterol or dyslipidemia. And what I will tell you is what was listed in the guidelines and what was commonly practiced were two separate things. And people associate the guidelines with medication, but let's look at them. And the first page is all about assessing risk, and so is the second page until we get to the very bottom of the second page. And there at the bottom of the second page, we see the first step of therapy. And the first step of therapy is not a medication. It is a formula. And that formula is less than 7% of calories from saturated fat, less than 200 milligrams of cholesterol a day, 10 to 25 grams of highly viscous soluble fiber, 2 grams of plant sterols and stanols to enhance LDL lowering or to lower bad cholesterol. Now, that may be an accurate formula, but if it's not translated to what somebody needs to do, that's not going to help anybody. So I'd like to try to break it down in a way that seems easier to understand. And I said, listen, the first part of it is about limiting the bad. Less than 7% of calories from saturated fat, less than 200 milligrams of cholesterol a day. And then I'll get a blank stare. And I say, exactly. So that is going to be impractical information. It's hard to measure. You're going to need to get your iPhone or your smartphone and weigh and measure your food. You probably need a scale, or you need to estimate. You need an app to estimate your food before you eat it. So in this particular sense, that might not be the easiest application for somebody starting out. But what is much easier, in my opinion, is to really focus on adding the good. Not necessarily taking away the bad, but adding the good. And you'll see the importance of this in just a minute. So adding 10 to 25 grams of highly viscous soluble fiber as a minimum, and the 2 grams of plant sterols or stanols that are recommended in the guidelines. Now, when we look further at the next page in the guidelines, above this page where all the medications are listed, there is a statement that says, consider adding drug therapy if LDL still exceeds levels shown, clearly indicating that drug therapy should only be added after TLC diet, after this formula. this non-medication formula. So when we look at other guidelines, the ACE guidelines, for example, American Association of Clinical Endocrinologists, in their guidelines for the management of dyslipidemia and prevention of atherosclerosis, they recommend a comprehensive strategy to control lipid levels and address metabolic abnormalities. And then they go on to say the first-line approach to primary prevention of patients with lipid disorders involves the implementation of lifestyle changes, including physical activity and medical nutrition therapy. And here we see this term defined, medical nutrition therapy. And within the definition, again, we see 10 to 25 grams of highly viscous soluble fiber and 2 grams of plant sterols or stanols. This is a grade A recommendation, the highest level recommendation that can be given. And here it is being given this grading in the ACE guidelines. So when we look at research today, subsequent research, here's a more recent publication from JAMA, Journal of American Medical Association, and it's from the Dietary Fiber Intake and Mortality in the National Institute of Health and American Association of Retired Persons Diet and Health Study. And we look at this data, published in 2011. This was a huge study, almost 400,000 people ages 50 to 71 in several places spread across the United States. It was a very special study approved by the Special Studies Institute Review Board for the U.S. National Cancer Institute. And when all of the variables were controlled for, what did they find? And what they found was, I mean, unbelievable. It's believable if you understand this, but it's just remarkable. They showed that higher dietary fiber intake resulted in a 24 to 56% lower risk of death in men and a 34 to 59% lower risk of death in women from not just cardiovascular disease, but also cancers, infectious, and respiratory diseases. Why all these disease states? Because even though we understand that cardiovascular disease is the culprit is inflammation, in many disease states, including pain, these inflammatory cytokines, the inflammation is the problem. And when we use the appropriate types of fibers in the diet, what we're actually doing is decreasing inflammation, decreasing pain, decreasing damage from diseases, cellular damage. So therefore, it has an application to cancer. It has an application to infectious diseases. So essentially, everything, not everything, but many significant things improve. So if we know what's needed, what is the problem? Well, to obtain the fibers and phytosterols needed naturally in our diet per the guidelines, we need 9 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. Hence the problem, because the average is 3 servings per day. And, so the real problem is simply that we're just not getting the fiber or phytonutrients needed to control dyslipidemia per the guidelines that I just showed you, the 2 sets of guidelines, and the resulting hyperinsulinemia, and I'll explain that effect in just a moment, the resulting overweight and obesity, you'll understand that in just a moment, and the resulting cardiovascular disease. So the solution is simply to look at the existing problem, prescribe the medical nutrition that's actually called for in the guidelines. But here's the caveat, here's the catch, in a manner that's easily incorporated. Because we can tell people 9 servings of fruits and vegetables a day, but guess what? That's going to work just as well as exercise daily for 20 minutes or more, right? And so the poster campaign will fail. And really the trick is to find ways to integrate medical nutrition into somebody's diet so that they can easily, like I'm about to do here, with all due respect, 1 second, like I just did right there, actually put this into my diet effortlessly because I've been speaking for 26 minutes here and my throat is dry. But I actually was supplementing my diet. And why do I do that? Because essentially I had the same challenge everybody else has. I didn't eat a proper meal today because today was too busy. So if it wasn't for my supplemental or my backup strategies, I wouldn't have the appropriate nutrition needed. So the solution really is to empower people with systems and tools that work, that are clinically proven to work, that are based on research. And in our medical practice, we use medical nutrition therapy in their practice tools. I tell somebody, if you come in with strep throat, I'm not going to tell you to go home and pray about it. I'm going to give you an antibiotic that I know will work. And so I'm looking for efficacious tools. Now, in my practice, what I use is a product for dyslipidemia called Unicity Balance. And it's a product that comes in a packet like this. And it comes in two varieties. Here's an orange and here's a pink lemonade flavor. And what is it? It's essentially 5 highly viscous soluble fibers. And between these 2 packets, I get my 2 grams of phytosterols that are called for in the 2 guidelines that I just shared with you. And what do you do with this? You take the packet of fibers and plant sterols and you mix it with water. You shake it up, and I tell my patients to drink it 5 to 15 minutes before they eat. And what is it? Well, it's nutrition with clinical benefits. It's made in different formulas so that it can address the nutritional deficiencies that people have, whether it's a meal replacement because they're skipping meals, whether it's an energy drink like myself right now having one, because you know what? It's been a long day. My day actually started at 2 a.m. and I've been going ever since. And so if I didn't have something like this, it was natural that I felt was good for me, I wouldn't be able to function at a high level like I do. And or the balance product that I use for myself personally for my cardiovascular health to reduce dyslipidemia. Now, how does this help? Very simple, very easy to understand. There's 3 major mechanisms of action here of just the balance product. I'm just going to talk about this one product just to give you a full understanding of the mechanism of action here. Now, the first mechanism of action, we just spent time going over those 2 guidelines intentionally, because I wanted to show you what was in the guidelines, first step therapy for dyslipidemia. And when we look at the ingredients of highly viscous soluble fiber and 2 grams of plant sterol, the ingredients are actually in this product, we understand, hey, that came from the guidelines. Exactly. So what we're doing is we're addressing the dyslipidemia. And when we do that, in particular the high triglycerides, for example, we will restore leptin sensitivity, and this will result in reduced cravings, portion control, and reduced cholesterol. So that's very important with cardiovascular disease as the #1 cause of death worldwide. So step 1 mechanism of action, very straightforward, very simple. It's the guidelines telling us to have these ingredients that we're not getting enough of in our natural diet. And then step 2 mechanism of action is mechanical. When you take highly viscous soluble fibers and you mix them with water, they thicken and they expand. And when you put this in front of food, guess what? You're going to feel like you've eaten something before you've eaten something. And what's that going to help us do? It's going to help us eat less. And that's extremely important, and we'll take it. Even if it's a simple mechanism of action, it's another mechanism that we're adding to the mix to synergistically get an even greater effect. Now, why is that important? Because guess what? People are still going to eat what they're going to eat. But if we can get them to eat less of it, of the bad stuff they're eating, that's a win, and we'll take it all day long. Now, the third mechanism of action, probably the most important, this one I'm going to explain a little more, which is the delay of the absorption of glucose modifying the rise of insulin. Now, let me show you what this looks like in a diagram. When you take the standard American diet, the SAD diet, we call it this high glycemic index food, this low highly viscous fiber food, this type of food and drink, glucose rises very rapidly. It also drops very rapidly. Now, the problem with that is that when it drops, people feel hungry, shaky, fatigued, irritable, headache, and they reach for something else to bring their blood sugar back up. And what they do is they repeat that pattern throughout the day. Now, the problem here is that insulin, pictured here in red, does not drop as quickly as these highly processed glucose or carbs. So really what we have is a delay in the decrease of insulin. However, when somebody reaches for another, high glycemic food, then what they end up doing is they end up repeating the cycle, pushing insulin up and keeping it up throughout the day. And the problem with this is that excess insulin or elevated insulin like this causes not only weight gain, but inflammation. Remember the culprit in cardiovascular disease. So what I do with this product is I tell my patients to put this in front of 2 meals minimum a day. Put it 5 to 15 minutes before eating. And what we can do when we do that is we will suppress or blunt the rise of glucose, thus modify the rise of insulin. And when we use appropriate meal spacing, 4 or more hours, what we're able to do is create these periods of lower insulin. Now, this is important because at this point, the body is able to access its free fatty acids in the stored body fat for fuel, and therefore the body starts to consume its body fat instead of adding to it. So obviously something very important with the metabolic disease that we see highly correlated with overweight and obesity. So, there are some other mechanisms of action, too many to go over this evening, whether it's polycosanol, chrysanthemum, calcium, B vitamins, multiple minerals. There are multiple mechanisms of action. The point that I want to leave you with is this. The product is clinically proven that we're talking about. The effects of this BioSelect formula on cardiovascular risk factors are clinically established. Not the ingredients in the product, the actual product itself. And when we look at the reason for that is this was created intentionally at Stanford School of Medicine with an intended effect of having a benefit for reducing inflammation and dyslipidemia. This was created in 1990 at Stanford School of Medicine. Since then, there have been studies at University of Connecticut, Emory University, Columbia University, UCLA, and double-blind placebo-controlled study at the Cleveland Clinic. Additionally, there's new research coming out of the University of Sydney in Australia, who, as you know, created the glycemic index. So the result of those studies, that's what matters, right? Well, in the patient outcome studies, what they were able to see was the effects on cholesterol, LDL, bad cholesterol. Simply monotherapy, just this product alone, no medication, was able to lower the LDL 31%. They were also able to raise, shown to raise good cholesterol 29%. That was with monotherapy. How about people that are already on a statin drug, as so many are today? Well, when you added this product to their regimen, the combo therapy of this plus a statin, you were able to further reduce LDL or bad cholesterol an additional 20%. So when we look at other factors, postprandial or after glucose meal spikes, as I showed you in the previous diagram, you're able to suppress or blunt the rise of glucose. Then when you added up that effect over 90 days, what you had was a profound effect in the reduction of hemoglobin A1C. And hemoglobin A1C, for those of you that do not know, is the 90-day average of the blood sugar and an extremely important marker in the diagnosis and management of diabetes today. So this product was shown to be able to lower hemoglobin A1C 15.2%. Now, when I saw this one slide, this is all I needed to know, or saw this one piece of data. It's all I wanted to know. This is all I needed to know. And I said, if this product only did this, that's all I needed. Because this was more powerful in effect than I was getting with many of the medications that I was writing for diabetes. So I started using the product in myself personally, and that's another story that I'll tell you in a moment. But when we looked at the outcome of these studies, everything moved in the direction we wanted to see, whether it was postprandial blood glucose, average fasting blood glucose, total cholesterol, hemoglobin A1C, blood pressure, body weight, triglycerides, and HDL. Everything improved. So all of those that we wanted to decreased, and the one that we wanted to increase, the HDL, the good cholesterol, increased. So that's why healthcare providers like myself are recommending these products to our patients, to our friends, to our colleagues, because it's safe even for children. Why do I say that? Well, I'm particularly fond of this pink lemonade balanced flavor because, we have dyslipidemia in children, and we have cardiovascular disease and obesity starting there in childhood. The damage starts there in the childhood. And so we really don't want to start putting our kids on statin drugs at 9 years old or 12 years old because they're overweight or obese and because their cholesterol's high. But I don't mind giving them a pink lemonade that I tell them, hey, this is going to, you're going to love this. You get to take it with, a couple meals a day, and they like it. It tastes so wonderful. I switched to this flavor as soon as it came out. So I'm very grateful to the company, and this is supposedly a seasonal item, and I hope they keep it. I hope they hear my response and say how important it is for our pediatric population to have something that tastes wonderful, as good as the orange, but that tastes really spectacular, even the big kids like myself like. And why is this important? There's no harmful side effects with this. These are fibers, 5 highly viscous soluble fibers, plant sterols and stanols, B vitamins, nothing that we're going to worry about giving a child. And why is that important? Well, because the alternative is medication that does have known side effects to be harmful. This product is listed in the physician's desk reference along with 11 other products by the same company. It's safe for use with medication. Consider this like food. If your medication, your current medication says take on an empty stomach, then take it 2 hours apart from this because this is like food. But if it says take with food, then feel free to take it right with this product. And it's proven. This product is clinically proven since 1990, and it's meeting a need that I cannot meet with pharmaceutical medication alone. So this is not a surprise to me because this company is a science-based company, has its origin actually in the pharmaceutical industry as Rexall drugstores. And Rexall drugstores were the first company to really create and manufacture supplements to put in their pharmacies. So this is an extension of it. And what I like to say is 22 years ago, this company made a right turn into health and wellness. They were ahead of the curve. They were seeing traditional medicine as disease management or sickness care, and they said let's get into wellness care prevention. So I'm very grateful to have these options for my patients that are seeking wellness. And this is helping lots of us providers, whether in family practice like myself, my wife in women's health, Dr. Oscar Aguilar, interventional cardiologist, who actually told me about the product initially. And somebody I had so much confidence in, I sent my father to him when my father needed a cardiology consult, who learned about it from a colleague, Dr. Laura Fernandez in Houston, Texas, that he trained with at Baylor College of Medicine, who learned about it from one of her colleagues, Dr. Annie Varghese, interventional cardiologist, very well known. And so across the spectrum of specialties, whether it's my colleague Jennifer Armendariz in oncology, Dr. Patrick Brandon, physical therapist, Barbara Schumann, certified personal trainer, or Dr. Charles Robert in physiatry, many other specialties, or well-known doctors like Dr. Gerald Bresnahan, who's been on-call cardiologist for 2 presidents and several visiting dignitaries from the Los Angeles area. The point is that we see the benefit of recommending these products. Not only do we take them for ourselves personally, but we do what we say we would do for our patients. So we recommend the same thing. And, as healthcare providers, we need to understand, we need to recommend the medical nutrition that's actually indicated in the guidelines, our guidelines. Here's the problem. Most of us just don't have the time and the resource to adequately address these needs for patients. So I'm very happy that this company has options, is evolved from a singular product to now a triad of products, and now actually a coaching program built around these products because we need that. We need that kind of accountability, support, knowledge. Now, the company recognizes that these products really need to be first line in healthcare, and so they make special accommodations for healthcare providers so that healthcare providers can refer their patients to get a discount. So you can get, as a healthcare provider, you can gift your patient with a discount, and they get a very strong money-back guarantee, which I'm very comfortable in. And that makes me feel good because when I write an antibiotic or when I write a blood pressure medicine, there's no guarantee that that medication will work or that it will not cause harm. And so I'm very happy that this company has very strong guarantees for their products. But this is what I'm most happy about. This is a 13-week coach-provided wellness program called The Transformation that this company has. And essentially what they've done is they've taken their 3 key core nutritional products, a meal replacement that's very specially formulated, 20 grams of protein, 4 grams of soluble fiber, a total of 4 net carbs. It has a complete multivitamin, 100% of many recommended vitamins and minerals. And essentially what they've done is they've created a nutrition that's missing in the diet today and put it in a system of products, whether it's the energy drink that I'm drinking right now. It's based on green tea, matcha green tea, the highest form of green tea available. Why this dark green? Because this is actually an entire leaf ground up. Why? More fibers, more phytosterols. They put some B vitamins, other things in here that's natural for energy. And the balance product that I've already spoken about, so I'm not going to get back into. But they couple this with personal coaching, and the personal coach is going to make a customized program to meet the goals or the needs of the client or the patient. And so I can confidently refer a patient to this program and know that the coach is going to teach them something that and guide them and support them, teach them something they really need to know. And anyway, why coaching? Well, I had a patient today in particular that he wanted just some product. He just tell me some products that I can take. And he had some of the worst cholesterols that I'd ever seen. Yet he is spending so much money on nutritional products. And he says, "What do you recommend?" And I said, "Well," he goes, "What about all my supplements?" And I showed him his own lab results. And I go, "How's that working for you?" And I said, "All your supplements got you to here." And I said, "You need supplements that were created to target the cholesterols and cardiovascular disease." So why coaching? Well, he wanted to just say, just give me the products, and didn't really want to change anything else he was doing. So the coaching, why? Because you really got to address the underlying problem. How'd you get there? So you don't continue to repeat the same mistakes. Because systems work and people fail. And that's what we need to understand. Why coaching? Because this program has a 95% completion rate. Of those 95%, 100% of those have a success rate, either addressing their cholesterol, their blood sugar, their body weight, whatever goals that they're really setting for themselves. And most importantly, because this program, unbelievable, has a 100% money back guarantee. In other words, somebody can go through the full 13 weeks of this program, and I forgot to tell you the best part. The coach is actually analyzing what you're doing on a daily basis. They're looking at the information that you send them, and they're analyzing it, preparing a lesson for you, a custom lesson, individual lesson, weekly. And essentially what they're going to do is every week they're going to teach you one new core principle. So by the end of the 13 weeks, you have 13 incredible changes that were just done one at a time. So they were very easy to institute, and you're actually able to build on one to the next. In the company, when they came out with this guarantee, I was astounded. The company said, "Look, go through our entire program, and if you're not completely satisfied at the end, do our product program, use our products, take our calls, give us the information that we need to help coach you, and if you're not satisfied at the end, we'll refund the money." So that to me is phenomenal, fantastic. I can do that all day. I can recommend that to people with confidence all day long. And that's what I try to do. Now, there's other personal group challenge programs for people that are that want to coach themselves. That's great for highly motivated people that are, have a good format. The company will give you a little bit of a guideline. I don't recommend that first line. I recommend the transformation program because I can guarantee that you're going to be satisfied with the results, or you're going to get your money back, and you're going to have a knowledgeable, well-educated coach that has a background in fitness and or nutrition. And to me, that's extremely important because people need to understand what they don't understand. They need to understand how they got to where they are, and they need to understand how to fix what they haven't been able to fix on their own. So transformation program, highest recommendation among those available options there to my patients. So, and to myself. This is a program that I just finished going through myself. Lost an additional 15 pounds that I wasn't able to lose before. And, the alternative, and why I credit my coach for the coaching, the accountability, the support. Boy, that was a lot of support. I really needed that support because I knew a lot of the things I needed to do, but I just couldn't get it done without that encouragement, that support, and that accountability. So I'm very grateful to my coach for that. The alternative is what? Well, how long are we going to find this acceptable? That our patients continue to do whatever they find in the magazines. Green coffee bean extract. The study just got pulled as unreliable now. Dr. Oz had been questioned in front of Congress for, I saw that study and people come to me all the time and they're like, what about this? What about this? And I said, it hasn't been out long enough to even have any outcome data on it. So when we have proven results, when we have proven products based on clinical guidelines, what's actually needed in the environment, in the diet that's missing in our environment, compared to articles and advice that celebrities are giving with the latest fad, it's part of the problem. And we continue to give medication and continue to get the same kind of results. We need to understand that this is a vicious cycle, and continuing to repeat the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is insanity, in the words of Albert Einstein. So, with the portion sizes in food increasing, the point that portion sizes in body increasing, where people are walking around, riding around in scooters because of complications from diabetes and neuropathies and pinched discs and prematurely worn hips and prematurely worn knees. And when we have diabetics that know they're diabetic, but actually just given up because they think it's too hard to control their diabetes, so that they can't even control because they can't control their appetite, and they're ending up with complications like amputations. We need to make a change. And with Family Practice News, American Heart Association said last year, fewer than 1% of U.S. teens have an ideal diet. We don't need more medication. We need to address the core problem, which is nutritional and lifestyle. And here's a program, here's a method to do that. So when to prescribe medical nutrition? Well, whether it's dyslipidemia, cardiovascular disease, metabolic disease, abnormal glucose, hypertension, prehypertension, diabetes, prediabetes, PCOS, dietary deficiencies, people that desire weight loss, people that are overweight, people that postpartum weight loss, inflammatory diseases, irritable bowel syndrome, hypoglycemia, which is low blood sugar that happens after you get a spike of high blood sugar, whether people realize that or not. People with fatty liver, elevated liver enzymes, people that are requesting non-pharmaceutical options. Boy, I get excited when those people come in. And because they speak to my passion. And when people can't exercise due to back pain, knee pain, hip pain, people go, oh, I can't lose weight because I can't exercise. I'm like, you didn't gain weight because of exercise. You gained it because of the way you're eating, and because that's the most powerful predictor of your health and your weight. Although exercise is extremely important, and I want to emphasize that. I want to emphasize that people can lose weight even if they can't exercise, regardless of what their history has been or what they've been told or told themselves. And for people that are health conscious, preventive medicine part of the solution and part of the cure. But per the guidelines, this is the point. Medical nutrition and lifestyle modifications are always first-line treatment. So let me show you what I've done when I do exactly that, the first-line treatment, medical nutrition, in my patients. So case one is something I call a 2 routine physical. And this patient, his name is George, 56 years of age, male, 207 pounds, body mass index of 31.5, medical history, none. And nothing's wrong with him according to him. You know why? Because he feels fine. Nothing's wrong, right? Because he feels fine. Well, like I tell George and other patients, like, hey, George, the car feels fine even when the needle of the gas gauge is on me, right until it runs out of gas, right? And George kind of gets quiet. He goes, just give me my lab order. I'm just here to get a discount on my insurance. I said, George, I'll be happy to do that. Let me do a quick physical, and we'll get those labs for you. And so we did. And this is a patient that I back from 2012, just to show you I've been doing this for a while. And I'll show you some more recent examples right now. And 2012, I see him. He's 207 pounds. Here's his fasting blood sugar at 166. His cholesterol don't look too bad, meaning that he was probably trying, but he couldn't fix his blood sugar. So fasting blood sugar of 126. As we know, 60s, 70s, and 80s are normal blood sugar. 90s are elevated. Above 100 is called abnormal. Above 125 is called diabetes. Here he is at 166. Now, for reference, fasting glucose above 125 and hemoglobin A1C greater than 6.5 is diagnostic for diabetes. So we call him in for that hemoglobin A1C. He comes out at 7. So here he has a fasting sugar that's clearly consistent with diabetes and a hemoglobin A1C that's clearly consistent with diabetes. And I tell him, listen, George, anybody else's clinic, you're probably going to end up on medication. But I'm going to share with you a medical nutrition option I feel very comfortable with. It's actually guaranteed. And he says, well, what do I have to lose? And I said, well, we'll find out, won't we? And so on George's follow-up, about a little less than 4 months later, he had 45 pounds that he lost. And, when we look at his lab results, his A1C went from 7 to 5.4. So we took a person that was completely consistent with diabetes and put them completely consistent with normal. So actually, I gave him the diagnosis of abnormal glucose the first time, giving him a chance to repeat it. And the second time, I gave him the diagnosis of normal. So he did not get the diagnosis of diabetes. And we did this without pharmaceutical medication. That's the point. Case 2, what about somebody who already has diabetes and high cholesterol? Well, this is the Mrs. M, 45 years of age, routine diabetic follow-up, non-insulin dependent diabetes, uncontrolled maximum doses of multiple oral diabetic medications. When we see her initial labs, we can see that her triglycerides are up, her fasting sugar is 222. Now, her hemoglobin A1C is 10.8. For reference, for those of you that know or don't know, hemoglobin A1C should be 6 to 6.5 for a known diabetic to be considered controlled. She's at a 10.8. The guidelines also say above 8 on multi-drug therapy, she should be on insulin. Here she is at a 10.8. Well, when she was an 8.7, I said, Margarita, let's do this medical nutrition therapy. And she says, no, I'm going to just try harder with my diet. Well, how'd that work out? Well, she worsened it. And, that's an example of people not knowing what to do. But so I told her, I said, listen, I can put you on additional oral medication. It's not going to help you. Not even close. I can put you on insulin for the guidelines I should, or I can add to you what we should have been doing in the first place, which you didn't want to do, which is nutritional supplementation, medical nutrition. She says, well, I'll do that now. And so she agreed to a 90-day trial. She said, what do I have to lose? And I said, well, let's see. So she did the balance of 90-day trial, and we can see the follow-up labs here. Her cholesterols are normalized. As a matter of fact, her LDL is 77, and that's without a cholesterol medicine. That's simply with this product. Her fasting sugar dropped from 222 to 106, and her hemoglobin A1C dropped from 10.8 to 6.8. Fantastic in a little over 3.5 months. So we did this just by adding a supplement to her diet. That's it. So case number 3, I'd say this is what else is left. What else is left? This patient is referred to me by a friend, meaning that her current health care provider can't get her blood sugar down, or she can't get it down in conjunction with her health care provider. Essentially, when a friend refers your patient, they're expecting a miracle. And you want to deliver. And in all truth, you do want to deliver. And so what am I going to do for this patient? Well, she's 54 years of age, Mrs. L, female, 192 pounds, normotensive on medication. Body mass index is 35.5, so clinically she's obese. She's diagnosed as uncontrolled diabetes. Here's her medication list. She's on Crestor and Trilipics, 2 lipid medicines, and maximum doses of 3 diabetic medications, one of them which is a injectable diabetic drug. Nevertheless, her hemoglobin A1C is 10.9. Remember, again, for reference, 6 to 6.5 is considered controlled, and she's at 10.9. So at this point, here's her initial visit, November 12th, 2012. She's at 192 pounds, and here's her initial lab work. Her hemoglobin A1C 10.9, like I said, and at this point, I said, listen, I can put you on additional oral medication. It's not going to bring you to goal. I can put you on insulin. The guidelines say I should, above 8 on multi-drug therapy. And she absolutely didn't want insulin. She goes, I'll do anything I can to get away from insulin. And then I said, well, there's this 13-week coaching. And she goes, tell me more about that. And I said, well, they're going to teach you. And she goes, that's what I'm looking for. I need somebody to guide me, teach me, support me. That's what I've been looking for. And I said, okay, well, I said, it's also a guaranteed program. And she says, just how do I get started? So I started her in that program, and I said, look, I want you to monitor your blood sugar and see me back in a couple of weeks. And so she did. And at that point, I was able to actually stop one of her medications, one of the 3 diabetic medications, even though she was considered uncontrolled. And she was kind of hesitant. She says, how are you going to stop my medicine if I was uncontrolled and I came to see you? And I said, well, with the products that you're using, the benefit is to your blood sugar, and obviously we're seeing a great reduction in it. And I don't like that side effect of that medicine, so I'm going to take it away from you. I'm confident that at the end of this program that your blood sugar is going to be greatly improved. So she reluctantly stopped the medication. And when I saw her at the conclusion of that program, I told her, okay, at the conclusion we're going to do follow-up labs, which should be about 3 months later. She came in about a little bit more past that. But at that point, she was down 18 full pounds. So talk about a happy patient. Help them lose 18 full pounds, and they're going to love you. And so it's very rewarding, very satisfying to me. But here's the thing. It's satisfying when I look at the lab results, when I see that her triglycerides essentially were cut in half. Remember, she was on 2 lipid medicines. And nevertheless, she was at 310. We dropped those to 173. Her fasting sugar was 278. We dropped it over 100 points to 167. This is just in the first 3 months or so. And her hemoglobin A1C went from 10.9 to 7.3, the best that it had been in I don't know how long, because I got her from another patient, another provider, but she said that was the best she could ever remember. So, you know, we did this without medication. As a matter of fact, we did it with less medication. We stopped one of the medications. So, you know, what other option would I have had for that patient? I couldn't have coached her myself because I don't have the time to do those things. I can't look at somebody's diet every day. If I can imagine, I've had to look at multiple patients' diets every single day and then come up with a lesson for them that I was going to talk with them 30 minutes each week, which is part of the transformational program. I couldn't do it. So, and then this patient walked in my door this year, and we'll title this one, I Don't Want Medication. And this is Sandra, and she's 34 years of age, 240 pounds when she was referred to me. Look at that blood pressure, 172 over 112, 153 over 109, body mass index of 41.2. She was referred for uncontrolled high blood pressure. And, oh, by the way, I have recently diagnosed diabetes. She's without medication. She didn't even go to the doctor for any of the blood pressure or sugar. She went because she was having a GYN problem. So my wife saw her, referred her to me, and said, you need to see my husband. He's going to work with you on your blood pressure and on your blood sugar. So these are the labs from March of this year. Glucose was 233 fasting. The hemoglobin A1C was 9.1. Okay? Remember, 6.5 or above is considered diabetes. She said 9.1. Any sugar above 200 is automatically diagnostic of diabetes. So when I'm sharing this information with her, and I'm sharing her numbers with her, I said, look, above 200 and you're at 233, it's diabetes. And above 6.5 and you're at 9.1, it's diabetes. And she responds, yes, but I don't want medication, and I heard you could help me. And, I kind of sat back for a minute, and I said, listen, there's a limit to what I can do. And she goes, okay, but I still don't want medication. So I had no other option for this patient. So I told her about the transformation. I told her about this core pack of products that was there. And I said, look, I'm going to monitor you. And so she chose that, and I started working with her. Now, I had to work intensely with her, not in giving her advice and things, but to make sure that she was going to stick with what she said she was going to do, which is one of the benefits of having a coach. I know the coach is going to take care of this patient or this client. But I needed to make sure that she did this because she walked out of my office and I gave her no medicine or recommended no medicine. It's a liability on my part. So I would call her on the weekend and say, you're still doing what you're supposed to do? And she says, yes. And I said, okay, great. And so I told her to start the products to follow up in 2 to 3 weeks, and she did. And when I had her initial labs and weight, her sugar was, her weight was 240, her glucose was initially 233. By the time she ended up coming to see me, her sugar was now 279. And at that time, she started the Friend Challenge, the Balanced Core Products. 3 months later, she was down 30 pounds. Now, let's look at her labs. Her total cholesterol that was 233 is now 161. Let's see what we want to highlight here. Her bad cholesterol, 112. Oh, her triglycerides, 257 went down to 123. And everything, you can see everything that's in the low risk category here. And when we looked at her fasting sugar, it went from 233 to 82. Now, what about her hemoglobin A1C? It went from 9.1 to 6.1. And we did that without medication. Now, by the way, on this follow-up office visit, August 13th, she had down another 10 pounds. So here we are averaging 10 pounds a month. So this is amazing. And so in less than 5 months, she had a 3-point drop in her hemoglobin A1C, 40-pound weight loss, not weight gain, without medication per patient's request, and very, very happy patient. And guess what? I had no other options. She refused medication. So I was very happy to know these options. Now, I could belabor the point and go on and on with more and more case studies, but that's not the point. The point is to bring valuable information to you so that you become aware that there are these options and understand what the needed prescription is today. And it's not another pill. It's medical nutrition, and it's programs and systems and tools that can help people address their nutritional problems. And so when we look again at that formula, formula recipe, that's what a prescription is supposed to be. But it has another another definition, which is take thus. And I hope that you take thus this information and do something valuable with it, for yourself, your own health, your community, the health of your patients, the health of your clients. Do something valuable, because here is the point. Everything we do matters, and everything we don't do matters too. And the person that you might help, you have no idea. But, that's why I'm giving you this information. That's why I'm sharing this with you, because it's my hope that we will affect health positively. We'll give people second chances that they never knew they were getting, just because we intervened with appropriate nutrition, appropriate wellness, appropriate interventions for nutrition that they just thought tasted great, or were convenient when they didn't have time to eat, or were dessert-like. So this company's ingenious in creating systems, ingredients, and tools that people can benefit from, and putting it in a way that is very highly consumable and easy to integrate. So get back with the person that invited you. Thank them for sharing this information with you. Ask them how you can get more information, get your questions answered, or get started helping other people like we do. Get started on this and save a life. That life might be your own, or somebody that you truly care about, or somebody you may never meet. But join us in our efforts. And I will see you again in 2 weeks, or you will see me. You're welcome to invite guests. And thank you very, very much for your time and your attention this evening. Good night.